Welcome into the PFF NFL show. Steve Palazzolo along here with Sam Monson. It's time to review the 2018 NFL Draft, Sam. It's finally in the books.
Done. Over.
I can't believe it. We got to start by saying, please, you can still go get your NFL Draft Guide, PFF Draft Guide, as part of Edge and Elite. Get the information you need on all of your team's new draft picks and undrafted free agents. There's plenty of them in there. Over 400 player profiles and over 2,000 players at least had a stat, at least some sort of nugget in there. So we have pretty much everybody covered, plus the most advanced quarterback breakdown you can ever find. So if you have Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, whoever it is, your new quarterback, Kyle Lauletta, for you Giants fans, go check it out. It's all in the PFF Draft Guide as part of PFF Edge or Elite.
Yeah, this is the time you want it. It was interesting enough leading up to the draft just to find out who everybody was, but now you have a list of names that your team just drafted. Now's when you want to know all about them. You want all that data.
If I know the hardcore fans, they're saying Cowboys fans are just going through their, 8 to 10 guys and saying, I want to know everything I can about these guys, and the PFF Draft Guide's the best way for you to do that. So go and check it out. All right, we're going to split this up into 2 podcasts. There's a chance it could get split up into 4. Let's see how long-winded we get here, okay? We're going to start with the NFC East, work through the NFC as much as we can. Maybe we split it up into 4 podcasts. Maybe it's split up into 2. We'll see how it goes, but there's a lot to discuss here. So let's go team by team, Sam. You and I combined to do our all 32 NFL team NFL grades. That's all on ProFootballFocus.com. We have a little blurb on each day 1, 2, and 3 for each team. Some teams have an even more in-depth breakdown on the website, and we're going to give you everything we can here. Starting with the Cowboys, okay? This is one of the drafts that we graded as elite, that we said was one of our favorite drafts all around. I think the value matched up in a number of key areas. Any high-level thoughts on the Cowboys draft before we kind of go pick by pick and what we thought?
Well, particularly at the top, they made interesting picks, good picks, but interesting ones. They drafted Leighton Vander Esch in the first round, then Connor Williams in the second round. I don't know that either of those positions are dramatic areas of need, not where you would expect the Cowboys to have gone, but I think both of them are really good players that will actually help this team dramatically going forward. And then all the way through this draft, they just hit players that we really liked. So yeah, it became one of our favorite drafts, I think, overall.
Yeah, I like the fact that a lot of people were, calling for wide receivers for them in the first and second round, us included. But because we kept saying, look, it's a deep wide receiver class of 2s and 3s that you can get later on, and they got some of our favorite guys, Michael Gallup in the 3rd, Cedric Wilson in the 6th. We'll get to those guys in a second. Let's start with Leighton Vander Esch in the 1st. A guy that you loved throughout this entire process. And if you look at what they're trying to do under Rod Marinelli, a team that played so much man coverage in 2016, and then they revamped the secondary in 2017, played a lot more zone. He's kind of a zone cover 2 type of guy at heart, and Leighton Vander Esch really fits that mold for what they want to do defensively.
Yeah, he absolutely flows to the football. He led the nation last season in defensive stops, and not just tackles, but tackles in and around the line of scrimmage, the impactful defensive plays. And in coverage, he was okay, but it was clearly the weaker area of his play. But we talk about potential and growth all the time. And Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds were the other 2 linebackers in the first round that everybody was talking about potential because they're so young. But Leighton Vander Esch has actually played fewer snaps than both those guys by a distance. I think 700 fewer snaps than Tremaine Edmonds. So his potential may actually be just as high, even though he's older, because he just hasn't actually played the game that much. And he reminds me a lot of rookie year Luke Kuechly in the NFL, who had that same ability to just find the ball in the run game, just worked his way through trash, always in on the tackle, was okay in coverage, particularly on stuff in front of him. When he was able to see the pass developing in front of him. Where he struggled was dropping off from the line of scrimmage and covering deep zones and understanding when routes would be coming in behind him. And he got better at that to the point where he's now the league's best linebacker at doing that. I mean, I don't know if Leighton Vander Esch can get there, but I think he can at least improve that part of his game, because I think it's probably the hardest thing to do. as a linebacker. And if he does get better at that, then I think he becomes a real star.
Don't set expectations too high now for the Cowboys.
No,
fans.
not Kuechly, but if he can get better at that area, he becomes a really good player.
So here's what I'm fascinated by what the Cowboys have done on defense the last couple of years. We know it's all about the pass game in the NFL, and I just love the versatility that they've added to that defensive back seven, essentially. You already have Sean Lee at the linebacker level. It's unfortunate that Jalen Smith, I don't know if he'll ever get back to that athletic self that he was before, but adding Van Der Esch next to Sean Lee gives just some good coverage versatility. Both guys can fly to the football. But then on the back end, last year adding Jordan Lewis, Chidobe Awuzie, two corners that we really liked, guys that could both cover the slot, cover outside. Anthony Brown can kind of do both as well. And then I love both safeties. Byron Jones, who can he goes from safety to kind of tight end eraser. That's his job over there, right? He goes and covers tight ends one-on-one. Xavier Woods has plenty of experience covering the slot at Louisiana Tech and playing safety. I just love the versatility in the back seven now for Dallas, and it's probably less exciting than they were maybe 2 years ago from a name standpoint, but this feels like one of those coverage units that's just going to get better and better as the years go with all the youth that they've added the last couple of years.
Yeah, they really loaded up with young players, and how those guys developed was going to determine how good this team can be, and they almost all seem to hit pretty quickly. So assuming those guys continue that kind of upward trend, this defense could get really good quite quickly.
All right, their second-round pick, Connor Williams out of Texas. A lot of people had him as a guard at the next level. We said, no, give him a chance at tackle. We had him as a first-round prospect, a guy who had an outstanding true freshman season. We don't see true freshman tackles come in and play as well as he did for Texas in 2015. 2016, he was outstanding. Different scheme, only gave up 4 pressures all year. And then 2017 struggled a little bit, didn't have great film, and then he battled injury, came back, and just wasn't the same guy. But, man, you talk about this Dallas defense, offensive line that we know is already outstanding. And now, the weaknesses the last couple of years surrounding 3 Pro Bowlers was left guard and right tackle. And Connor Williams could step in and maybe solidify that right tackle spot, put La'el Collins back to left guard, and the best offensive line is back.
And that's, for them, I think it doesn't really matter if he's a tackle or a guard, because that is the dilemma. Do they keep La'el Collins at right tackle? Do they move him back to left guard? Williams would allow you to do either one. If he's a guard or a tackle. I think what they're going to do is play Connor Williams at right tackle, moved La'el Collins back into guard where he was a little bit better, and that makes the most sense to me. And that's probably, I think, the best thing they could do. Williams, I think, represents a really good pick for them.
Yeah, really liked that value there. And then let's look through the rest of the draft. Let's just give our best value picks here, Sam. I think both wide receivers, Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson. Gallup in the 3rd, Wilson in the 6th. Both guys we had higher on the board, and they're the unspectacular, not great athlete types who know how to get open and create separation.
Wilson in the 6th, I think, is particularly good value. I don't think there's a huge gap between him and Michael Gallup, and there's 3 rounds between the two of them in terms of where they were selected. So right. I think Wilson that low is a really good value pick. It's going to be an interesting duo to watch, because if both those two guys struggle at anything, it's just generating separation. Getting open by a distance. They can both make contested catches. Gallup is a really good route runner. Wilson can do some of that stuff as well. But how does that translate at the next level if the thing you struggle at is separation?
Right. Yeah, so both of those guys I think can contribute. The one other name I want to highlight is Mike White, quarterback in the 5th round, a guy that I thought could have been good value in the 3rd round for certain teams. That was assuming Mason Rudolph went a little bit higher. Rudolph ended up falling to the 3rd. White was in that next tier of quarterback with Kyle Lauletta on our draft board. So getting him in the 5th as a backup, developmental type guy, he can, I think that could be a nice steal as well. And I think he at least solidifies that backup quarterback position for Dallas in the future.
Yeah, we really saw what we talked about pre-draft, which is quarterback has become this yes or no proposition. If you think this guy can be a franchise quarterback of the future, he goes in the 1st round. And if you don't, he probably doesn't go until the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And that's really what we saw. Is obviously the NFL decided that there just wasn't enough in Mason Rudolph for them to think he has a real shot at being a franchise quarterback. He missed out in the 1st and then didn't even go in the 2nd, slipped all the way to the 3rd. That bumped Lauletta down another round. We thought he could go in the 2nd round. And then a guy like Mike White falls all the way to the 5th.
All right, anybody else in this Dallas draft? Bo Scarborough?
I think it's very fitting that the Dallas Cowboys drafted Bo Scarborough. It just seems like a perfect Cowboys pick. This is a guy that just looks like an intimidating, dominant running back and has never really shown it in college.
In late 2016, he looked like a future star.
Battled injuries. I mean, he kind of looked the same size and shape as Derrick Henry. Looked like a born replacement. But unlike Henry, never had the workload because he battled injuries the whole way. So Henry was bulletproof. You could give him 700 carries in a season, he'd just keep on trucking. Scarborough has been an awful lot more brittle than that. So I guess one thing is we just don't know what he can be yet because he's never had the shot to realize his potential with a fully healthy run of it.
All right, let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles, staying in the NFC East. They traded back out of the first round, only had one pick up until round 4. But I think when they did pick, a combination of guys that we liked, some upside type picks. Sorry. But let's start with second rounder, Dallas Goedert. That's our top tight end on our board. I understand why some of the other tight ends, I understand why Mike Gesicki at tight end went ahead of Dallas Goedert because of the crazy workout. I don't really understand Hayden Hurst going above Dallas Goedert. I just love this fit. During the process, we had compared Dallas Goedert to Zach Ertz, current tight end on the Eagles roster, and I just think this is beautiful roster management. You can use them both together on the field. Initially, Carson Wentz does a fantastic job of throwing to tight ends, and then when Ertz is ready to walk, Goddard steps in and replaces him. This is a nice little fit.
Yeah, I mean, Brent Selleck has gotten very old.
Sorry, Brent.
Yeah, sorry. It happens to everybody. Father Time is undefeated.
He's younger than us, I think. Just saying.
Don't say that.
Well, it's all relative. Not for our profession, though. Like, we're still in our infancy. We're young for our profession.
I don't want to know how old I am. So, yeah, Ertz being the number 1 guy there, Dallas Goedert has a chance to step in and be the number 2 guy there. They can become an extremely dynamic duo, and then he does allow them the flexibility of allowing Ertz to walk the next contract that comes up. I also really like Avonte Maddox, the cornerback from Pittsburgh, who they got in the 4th round. He is a guy who, if he wasn't so small, would have been drafted dramatically higher. His tape is fantastic, but he is one of the smallest cornerbacks in this entire draft. 5'9", 180, something like that.
So he's the immediate slot replacement for Patrick Robinson.
So he goes straight into the slot by default just because of the size. There's no team that's going to give him a shot on the outside of those kind of dimensions. But he is feisty. He's physical. He plays bigger than it's a cliche, but he does play bigger than that. He is an aggressive guy. He's got an extremely good vertical. There's plays on his tape where he jumps up over a receiver, takes the ball away from them, even though he's only 5'9". He has a real shot to pan out as their slot corner.
This is how you attack the cornerback position. We're 2 years removed from saying the Eagles are really good across the board except wide receiver and corner. And now if you look at their corner situation, potentially one of the best in the NFL. Jalen Mills has continued to improve on the outside. He's going to get pushed by Sidney Jones, last year's second-round pick, who was injured all last season. Ronald Darby on the other side. You can battle Rasul Douglas, who's a big, long corner. Throw Avonte Maddox in the slot, and now you've got some depth there.
And this is a really important pick for them, even though it's a 4th-round guy, because all of those corners that this cornerback stable is very deep, but only on the outside. All those guys are perimeter corners. None of them really have good tape inside or even playing time inside. They need Maddox to be pretty good because their cornerbacks, their slot cornerback depth chart isn't nearly as strong as their perimeter corner depth chart.
So then we go to the defensive line. Josh Sweat, a guy that a lot of people loved because his testing was outstanding. He tested well in the right areas. Him going in the 4th round, we had him a little bit higher than that, but we didn't have him as the projected first or second rounder that some others did. So I think it was a good spot to get him, a guy that does have the athleticism. You could see the burst on tape at times, but he's always been better against the run than he has as a pass rusher. Never an elite pass rusher at Florida State, but certainly worth a look in the 4th round, and then you just roll him into this defensive line that's rolling 7 or 8 deep. It's a good place for him to just sit and learn and develop.
I am so bummed about their 7th-round pick because they took a rugby player, and I don't know a damn thing about him because...
I was going to defer to you completely on this.
I only know about rugby union guys, not rugby league. I know he exists, and I know the team that he plays for, but I know nothing about him.
That's a different thing? That's a different game?
It's a different code, I believe is the term.
Okay, so in my notes here, it was throw to Sam for the 7th round rugby game.
Yeah, so they drafted a giant rugby player who used to play for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, who is the team that Russell Crowe owns.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's the type of information I'm looking for.
Well, that's where my knowledge ends. He's big. He runs over people. I have no idea how good he is, and I certainly have no idea if he can play offensive tackle.
How do you say his name? Needless to say, we don't have PFF grades on Jordan Mailata.
Yeah,
Mailata.
Sure. Let's go with that.
All right, sweet. Pretty good draft by the Eagles, despite only having 5 actual selections. All right, staying in the NFC East again, New York Giants. They started off with Saquon Barkley at number 2. We've been very vocal about how we don't love running backs going that high, but let's try to twist this in a positive light and explain why Barkley can still be a good player. I mean, he can still be an excellent player for the New York Giants. Clearly, with their first 2 picks, trying to revamp that running game. And I think here's the best part about this whole first 2 picks. You got Barkley in the backfield, who, when we described his skill set, we said, look, he needs to have good run blocking to succeed. He's not a guy that's going to create as much as some others in this class. But when you give him the good run blocking, he's the biggest, most dynamic weapon in this draft. So now you have Will Hernandez, who we love as a mauling left guard in round 2, to go with free agent signing Nate Solder, one of the best run-blocking left tackles, and you are at least building this nice run-blocking line in front of him so that he can have success.
So this is a franchise-defining draft choice. It is. They had the option of Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or any other quarterback they wanted to take. The only guy off the board at this point was Baker Mayfield, who they may or may not have had number 1 on their board in terms of quarterbacks.
Rumor has it that they did, by the way.
Okay. Either way, they had their choice of every person in this draft other than Baker Mayfield at number 1, with Eli Manning turning, 37 now?
Yeah.
And they elected no. They're going to push on that. They're not taking the quarterback. They believe in Eli Manning, and instead they're going to take not just the best talent in this draft, but a running back, which has become less and less impactful in terms of what is actually defining games in today's NFL.
Do you want to drop the nugget that George and Eric from our sister podcast, our friends over at the PFF Forecast, which I do suggest you guys go and subscribe to, find it wherever you guys are listening to us, whichever podcast medium you guys are listening, because they, we stick to more film stuff, but using the grades, they stick to more of the deep dive data stuff. It's a great complement to what we do. They dropped a nugget on us last week as we were talking about the draft about running back value. That just blew my mind.
So they've been working on data to try and evaluate how much impact guys are actually having on the outcome of games. Obviously, that's what everybody's shooting for. You get the guys that impact the games the most, that are most determining whether you're winning and losing. And if you look at who is determining the positions that are determining who wins football games, it's everything to do with the passing game. Obviously, the quarterback is the most because that is the most important position.
By far.
But then it goes to cornerback, the guys who have the most impact in influencing the passing game. Wide receivers, pass rushers, pass blockers. It's everything to do with the passing game. And then, after that list, you start to get to running backs, run blockers, all that, run defenders, kickers. It's all the stuff at the back end. So one of the questions that comes up surrounding this draft process is, how much better, if any, could Saquon Barkley be than what Alvin Kamara did a year ago for the Saints? He was the best running back season we've seen for years. He was a fantastic dynamic weapon as both a ball carrier and as a weapon out of the backfield, a receiver, importantly. And he had the highest running back season we've seen in terms of this wins above replacement stuff for ages, and yet it was the 92nd highest figure for among skill position players.
Yeah, so since 2014, 92 receivers or 91 receivers had more valuable seasons. Than Alvin Kamara. So
basically, in terms of how much it impacts and how much it predicts winning games, even the best running back season you can conceive of is less impactful than a pretty good wide receiver season.
Right.
Which is the thing. So now, the thing that's in the New York Giants' favor is that they have come out and said the first thing, Pat Shermer said, I listened to him this morning, Sirius NFL Radio, first thing he said was, the first thing you look for with a running back now is, can he catch the ball out of the backfield? And that is Saquon Barkley.
They got the right guy. They got the right guy for that.
Saquon Barkley's skill set is elite receiver. The problem is, I don't know if you can use him in a dynamic enough way to get enough value to make it worth taking him, certainly over a quarterback, but even over, the best wide receiver in the class, possibly this class, because we're talking about a whole bunch of number twos. But it's just, they have said, to hell with all of this data. We are going with our gut that says Eli can still get it done, and that this guy is a generational running back talent that will make everything, it'll overcome the hard numbers in a way, in intangible ways. Now, to their credit, they have then gone about mitigating this or augmenting this pick about as well as they could possibly have done it. They got Will Hernandez in the second round. This is a day I'm just going to be stealing lines from other people, by the way. One of my favorite draft terms I heard over the weekend is somebody claimed that Will Hernandez played like he doesn't like people.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I like that. I'm throwing that one into the jargon next
So
year.
he
Doesn't
is
like
this, dominant, aggressive, hard-nosed run blocker. He's a good pass blocker as well, so I don't want to pigeonhole him into
he's only allowed 4 pressures over the last 2 years.
And at the Senior Bowl, he was dominating people in one-on-one drills. So I don't want to say that he's just a run blocker, but he should be moving guys at the point of attack. And with Nate Solder, that gives them a shot to being the best double team in the NFL. Then the pick that really seals it is in the 4th round. They kind of fell into Kyle Lauletta, who, as we mentioned earlier, fell in this draft. 4th round for a guy who we said is probably worth a 2nd-round pick. Had internal debate as to whether he should be ranked ahead of Josh Allen in our quarterback rankings. That is the pick that could potentially rescue this draft if it turns out all of this data about wins above replacement, EPA, all that kind of stuff is correct.
If Lauletta becomes the next franchise guy, right?
Yeah. If they stumble into a franchise quarterback in the 4th round, everything is redeemed.
For perspective, we had Lauletta graded higher than Davis Webb out of Cal, who was a rookie last year for the Giants. So a lot of people were saying, do you believe in Davis Webb? Would that help you to maybe make your decision? And it's like, no, I wouldn't have that much faith in Davis Webb to not take a quarterback. So we do like Lauletta. He was the highest graded quarterback that we had at throwing at the intermediate level. That's the 10 to 19 range. That's kind of your money spot in the NFL. His short area accuracy was excellent as well. Showed that at the Senior Bowl, especially in the red zone. Deep ball was not good at all. 2nd worst in the entire draft class out of about 39 guys that we graded. So just have to know the ups and downs you have there. Does not have a great arm, but he does kind of make up for it with that accuracy and anticipation. So kind of like a classic PFF guy that's, accurate and the stuff that matters versus, the pure arm and skill set that you do have to kind of mitigate a little bit at the next level. I want to add one more point on Barkley, though. I'm just fascinated by the fact that Darnold ends up going to the New York Jets, and both New York teams are always battling for supremacy in the city and the back page news and all that fun stuff. And it's going to be Barkley's career versus Darnold's career. And clearly we think Darnold is a franchise quarterback. We had him number 2 on our board. I know you thought he was more number 3 behind Rosen, but you still see him as a guy to build around. The fact that the Giants could have had Darnold and the Jets got him, that's going to be for years now a discussion. And then when you add in how much you have to pay running backs these days and what the 5th-year option looks like for Saquon Barkley, estimated around $18 million. We're talking... That's, average quarterback range, but that's insane for a running back. 4 or 5 years from now, will you be able to justify the Barkley pick, even if he's a Hall of Famer? That's the bottom line. Even if he's a Hall of Famer, is he as valuable as a top 12 quarterback in the NFL? And no, he's not.
He needs to be everything the Giants think he can be and possibly more for him to get anywhere near justifying this pick.
He needs to be a better passer than Eli Manning.
But he needs to do what Kamara did last year, plus be a dynamic, plus be a guy that can handle 200-plus carries on the ground at the same time.
Every year.
Being a fantastic, every year, for it to even be a conversation. Plus, if you look at the rest of the NFC East, Dallas had one of our favorite drafts. The Eagles roster is still really strong. They may have the best roster in football right now, even with the guys that lost this offseason, coming off a Super Bowl win with a quality coaching staff. And I think Washington had a pretty good draft as well. So that NFC East is going to be a pretty tough place to play next year. You're going to need Eli Manning to be playing at his best, and you're going to need everything you just pinned your hopes on to come true.
I will say, as far as mismatch weapons go with the Giants, having Odell Beckham, of course, a top 3 type of receiver out there. Sterling Shepard, who we love to play in the slot, who can get open. Evan Ingram, who they added last year, who really still can't block a lick, but can be a glorified slot receiver. And then Saquon Barkley as another guy. I mean, I do love that part of, creating mismatches and what they can do there.
Also, Pat Shurmur is coming off a year in which he got an excellent season out of Jerick McKinnon, using him in a variety of creative ways. He does have experience doing that with running backs, but this is a whole nother level of what you're going to need to do.
It is. Look, the other defensive interior players that they added, B.J. Hill, a guy who did his best work at the Senior Bowl, R.J. McIntosh, kind of a second-tier interior penetrator in this class where you didn't have a whole lot, so I thought that was pretty good value in the 5th. The third-rounder, Lorenzo Carter, same story that we just said with Josh Sweat, a guy who tested extremely well, but it never showed up on the field. Had almost a quarter of his pressures last year in one game, but it happened against Notre Dame. So it happened against the best offensive line, even though it came against tight ends a little bit there. Don't tell anyone. So Carter is a projection at this point in our world, though he does have the athleticism to maybe be that movable chess piece, linebacker, blitzer, rusher type guy. So I think that's where we are there. And especially with the Giants moving to this hybrid front, kind of fits what they're looking for there. So look, I think after Barkley, there's a lot of solid picks there in this draft for the Giants. I just think it looks cleaner if that pick was Sam Darnold.
Oh, look, I mean, everything, as nice as the rest of that draft was, everything comes down to Saquon Barkley versus a quarterback. They need to be right in 2 different ways. They need to be right that Saquon Barkley can change games all by himself and be Alvin Kamara plus, and they also need to be right that they don't need a quarterback in the next year or 2.
Right. That's it. All right, let's move on to the last team in the NFC East. It is the Washington Redskins, and they started it out with Daron Payne at number 13. This was one of the first picks in the draft where I thought a team went in and said, we want this position. And it's one of the things I don't love in the draft. One of my draft axioms is draft players, not positions, right, Sam? And this felt like, hey, we want Vita Vea. He goes off the board at 12. And then it's like, all right, give me the next interior defensive lineman on the board. And they go with Daron Payne out of Alabama. To be fair, I think a lot of people had him as a mid-first round type of pick. We just had him as an early second-round pick only because there were some question marks about him rushing the passer. But at the same time, he did have this dominant national championship game, which if you focus on that one and where he's unleashed a little bit, you can see that pass rush potential. So I'm torn a little bit on what Payne's really going to be at the next level. He just felt more like a late first at best in our world, a good run defender who still has questions rushing the passer.
Yeah, there were a few draft picks, particularly early on, that felt a little bit panicky. I don't know if this is one of them, but it does come down to what you think he can do as a pass rusher. All the stuff we talked about with Saquon Barkley and wins above replacement, expected points added, all this kind of stuff. It's the passing game. So being a great run defender and a guy who really can't rush the passer does you no good anymore. It's nice, but the difference between Ziggy Hood, who's one of the worst defensive linemen we've seen ever, and Daron Payne, who is a really good run defender, but if he can't rush the passer, the difference between those two guys, even over 500 snaps, is negligible in terms of what it's doing to your defense. So if for this to be a valid pick at number 13, this guy needs to be a quality pass rusher. And as you say, he's shown he can do it, albeit in limited sample sizes, i.e. a game. But if the Redskins take a look at that and say, everything we need to see is right there, that shows he can do exactly what we want him to do. If they're right, this is fine. Yeah. It's a greater risk than we would want to take if we were drafting this high. I think the same thing is true with Vita Vea. The question mark with him is, can he rush the passer as well, even if it's just pushing the pocket?
And he had much better pass rush numbers than Payne.
Yeah.
And that's why we put him in the first round.
So for the two of us, it would be, I think, a greater risk than either of us would want to take this high for either of those two guys. But the NFL is, they may be prepared to take that risk. And ultimately, if they're proved correct, it's fine.
Yeah, so I'll say this about Payne. Jonathan Allen, who they drafted last year, was spectacular across the board. I think he will be once he's healthy and all that fun stuff. So I'll put him in a different league. But for that next group of Alabama defensive linemen in recent years, A'Shawn Robinson, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Jaron Reed, those guys were all run-first players as well, who had pretty good pass rush grades, but nothing special. Payne is comparable to them against the run and has graded better as a pass rusher in college. So, and then when those guys have transitioned to the NFL, we've pretty much nailed those evaluations if you just compare their grades from college to the NFL. So that said, Payne graded better than all those guys. So he should be a little bit better than that next tier of Alabama player. So that's kind of your hope if you're a Redskins fan.
The other interesting thing is they do have Jonathan Allen already. They had Matt Ioannidis last year. Those two guys look like they can rush the passer. Don't give me that
I
look.
know you did this right up
see.
because yeah.
Don't look at me like that. Those two guys generated pressure. Don't make me go look for Ioannidis' numbers.
No, I know you love him.
He generated pressure.
You're right.
So Payne is now the
love.
third defensive lineman there. He is the guy that's taking Ziggy Hood snaps at nose tackle, which again is nice, but it's not. It's not like they were replacing one of their primary pass rush guys.
Yeah, immediate upgrade over Ziggy Hood, we think. The other big story was Darius Geis going second round, 59th overall. A lot of people thought this was a massive drop for Darius Geis, but it's actually a little bit in line with where our running back board fell. You, Mike, myself, we all watched Geis over and over again. I kept begging you guys to push him up a little bit, but you guys said, look, he's just not as clean as even Rashad Penny. And while Rashad Penny shocked the nation going in the first round, we were just sitting there nodding our heads saying, yeah, he was our number 2 running back. That's right. So Geis went right around, maybe a little bit lower than you would have said. We had maybe an early second on him, but
middle second.
Still good round. Still good value there.
I think it is, yeah. And it did sound like there was a mixture of people not thinking he was as good as other people did, and some off the field issues there. There was reports that he got into a shouting match with Deuce Staley, the Eagles running back coach. On
that's why the Redskins took him.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
If you're going to flip out on the Eagles, you already have some nice NFC East hate, right?
That's apparently it was the worst player prospect meeting they'd ever had. The Eagles. I kind of want to learn more about that. How do you get into a shouting match with Deuce Staley?
That's fascinating,
isn't it?
Yeah.
So Darius Geis is a good running back. I don't know if he's a great running back, so it makes sense to take him there. Washington have a half decent running back stable, but if they find a guy that can be a true difference maker carrying the ball, that's a good pick there. What I really liked is a couple of Washington's low round picks. I think they of any team in the draft, I think they started to really nail the 6th and 7th round, taking guys that have incredible ability. Greg Stroman, cornerback out of Virginia Tech, I thought had some really good tape. He allowed 12 catches last year.
That's it.
The whole season, 12 catches.
We had a third on him.
Yeah.
We had an early 3rd round. So that's great value for us. 7th round, yep.
And those 12 catches went for a pass rating of like 26. So it's not like they were big plays either. Sean Dion Hamilton, the linebacker out of Alabama, if he was healthy, he would be a day 1 or 2 pick. He is a really good player. But
shocking, another Alabama player, too, to the Redskins.
Has injured his knee in consecutive seasons, I think, and this one is worse than the last one. And the last one was bad enough that he was visibly worse on tape. So there's a huge question mark there. I had him. It's about the same place we had him. I think I had him in the 7th round in our horizontal draft board as well.
Just because of the injury.
Just because his injury is such a question mark. But, this is the NFL, and if it takes him a year to get healthy, if they eventually get the healthy version of Sean Dion Hamilton back on the field, that could be the best linebacker on that roster already.
The inside linebackers are not great there.
Yeah, it's not
Zach
a high
Brown,
bar to clear.
Mason Foster out there.
Yeah, it's not a high bar to clear, but that's what you get in the 6th and 7th round. You take guys that have upside. You have a chance of becoming something better than they are right now.
Yeah, Trey Quinn in the 7th, 91.1 PFF grade last year, breakout season where the guy just knows how to get open. You're kind of your classic, not your classic slot because he's a little bit bigger, but real good subtlety to his route running. I think he has a path to maybe seeing some time on the field. And then Tim Settle, 5th rounder on the defensive interior. He was a guy that was a redshirt sophomore, graded extremely well for 2 straight years. He just needs to have his game polished up a little bit. Ends up on the ground a little bit too much, but you see the natural burst off the line of scrimmage and the power that he can play with. 3rd round tackle, Jerron Christian. Just felt like this whole group of tackles in this class who have major question marks, and you're just kind of hoping. But he has gotten better every single year, 84.9 grade last year. Troy Apke, the 4th rounder, crazy athlete. Kind of liked him on tape and coverage. I think he could do some damage. He just got to clean up some of the tackling and the big plays that he's allowed throughout his career. But he crushed the workout.
What was his 40 time?
It was in the 4th or low 4.3s, I believe it was.
Shocked Deion Sanders.
Shocked him. Why?
Shocked him.
Why was that? All right, so Redskins draft, we gave it a good overall grade over on ProFootballFocus.com. Let's move to the NFC North and the Chicago Bears, kicking things off with Roquan Smith at 8. I got no hate for that pick.
No, I like that pick.
I love it.
Roquan Smith is the top coverage linebacker in this draft class by a distance. He's the perfect linebacker for today's NFL. He can make a difference in coverage for that team. I think I like that pick. Given that they Brasky brought back their entire secondary in free agency, that area was patched up. So I have no problem with adding the best coverage linebacker to that defense.
Yep, we love Roquan Smith. Can play zone, can play man, flies to the ball. I thought solid picks, those first 3. James Daniels at center, the 39th overall pick in the draft. I think depending on, what they're going to run schematically, if they're going to run a ton of outside zone, which I think you can certainly expect with the new regime here, he was probably the best outside zone blocking center in the draft as far as just his quickness off the ball, his ability to make those impressive reach blocks. He's still young, so talking to Mike Renner during his evaluation, he said, look, he loses to power a lot, but he's really young, and that's one of those things that you feel like can improve. So Mike didn't say upside, but I think he implied, hey, we can improve that a little bit.
That's what he was feeling.
That's what he was feeling, absolutely. So we'll see what they do as far as the depth chart goes. Cody Whitehair has played center in the past. He could play, he played tackle in college. He could have played anywhere. So if he's playing left guard and you have Daniel stepping in at center, that's a pretty good interior offensive line with Kyle Long at right guard, and then they're just sitting at average out there at tackle with Charles Leno and Bobby Massey. But that's not a bad offensive line. Yeah, average is good in today's NFL. Really liked the Anthony Miller pick with their second rounder, 51 overall. Another weapon for Mitch Trubisky. So if we reset what they've done this offseason, they have Allen Robinson, big body, deep threat, contested catch guy who could also separate. Taylor Gabriel, who can run, yards after the catch, screens, shifty with some speed. And then, adding Anthony Miller, who plays bigger than his size. He could do a little bit in the contested game. Really like Miller's skill set. I mean, they've added a lot. Plus Trey Burton at tight end as a, movable Y tight end type of player. I like it.
Yeah, look at what they have done to this offense. They had the worst receiving core in the game last season. Any troubles that Mitch Trubisky had were largely for the fact that he wasn't throwing to anybody. I mean, he was young, obviously green given his history, but there was nothing to work with there. Now you've got Allen Robinson, you've got Taylor Gabriel, you've got Anthony Miller, Trey Burton. Even some of the low guys on that depth chart have got real talent. DeMarcus Ayers and Tanner Gentry are both guys that we've liked in the past. Got the ability.
Javon Wims in the 7th round, another guy, big body, who's just kind of learning the game and moves a little better for a 6'4" receiver than you'd expect.
And then you still have Kevin White sitting there on the roster on, the off chance that he could get healthy and might actually turn up one day. This, especially given the coaching staff that's now in the building, this could be a dramatically better Chicago Bears team than we've seen in the past. And it really wouldn't shock me if Mitch Trubisky had a really good year too.
Yeah, it's going to be one of my favorite stories to watch next year. I think it's something we want to maybe dive in on the site and just see how are they going to piece all these receiving weapons together. Other somewhat interesting pick, Kylie Fitz, I think in the 6th, a guy who looked like he was on his way to emerging as a really good edge a couple of years ago, battled injuries quite a bit, and is at least worth a look as a late round pass rusher. Good with the Bears?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good draft.
Let's go to we had good grade on the Chicago Bears there. All right, let's go to the Detroit Lions.
Oh, no.
Oh, come on, Sam. Don't be negative here. So I think the initial – so there's a lot of themes sometimes that you can get out of a draft. We'll talk about it on the AFC podcast. I feel like the Dolphins theme was all right, let's middle of the field. We want to own in between the numbers. Teams have themes, right? Mm-hmm. Coverage, Packers, all about the pass game. We'll talk about them in a minute. The Lions felt like they were really trying to enhance the run game. Oh, they're worried about the run game, running the ball, establishing the run, and I get it to a point. I mean, when you look at Matthew Stafford the last few years, so much pressure on his shoulders. Lions fans have been reminding us left and right, he's got no running game. They did everything that they could to help out the running game. So let's start with the first pick, Frank Ragnow. We love this pick because he was our number 1 center. Number 1 graded center for 2 straight years, fills a need, enhances that offensive line. Love the Ragnow pick.
Yes. I think Ragnow is a great player. has a player that PFF has been championing all the way through this pre-draft process, is the best center in the draft, will be one of the best centers in the National Football League, is a great run blocker, is a pretty good pass blocker. I have no problem with taking Frank Ragnow in the first round.
Okay, so then it gets a little dicey for you?
Yes.
All right, so they traded up in the second round to get Kerryon Johnson out of Auburn, who's a solid running back. He has 1 year of production under his belt, but not a guy that we saw as a top 6 running back in this draft class. So what I told you was like, hey, I kind of like Kerryon Johnson. If it was a round later, it'd be okay. At as the 43rd player in this draft, that felt a little rich.
Here's the thing, right? All that stuff we talked about, the passing game being the only thing that matters in today's NFL, all of those numbers, everything there, the Lions obviously haven't received that memo yet because they are building a team to dominate the 1985 season again. They are taking on the 85 Bears here, and they're going to run the ball hard between the tackles, and they're going to stop the run. They're going to stop William the Refrigerator Perry coming up the middle on them, and that's how they win the Super Bowl. The problem is this is 2018, and that's not how teams play anymore.
This is reminiscent of that was the exact line I used for the Falcons about 4 or 5 years ago.
When they were getting tough?
They were getting tougher. And it was all about like Paul Soliai and Tyson Jackson. And the Falcons were a team that were in massive need of pass rushers, and they just kept getting these big body defensive tackles trying to stop the run.
And here's the thing about this is I don't even hate the players that they brought in a lot of the way. It's more what it indicates that drives me insane. So I love Ragnow in their first round pick, but it's only the next 5 picks that illustrate the only reason they brought Ragnow in is because he dominates in the run game.
So you have Kerryon Johnson at running back, Tracy Walker, who's an okay safety, graded okay for us. Again, that felt a little bit high for us in the third. Deshaun Hand, another one of those Alabama linebackers, 5-star player who just never lived up to the hype.
The worst of them.
But by far the worst of them. And a run-first player, Tyrell Crosby, apparently going to move into guard.
To play guard because he's really big and strong.
So it could be a good pick, round 5 for him.
And then to crown off this run-first attitude, they drafted a fullback in the 7th round.
They did. It was a good fullback, at least. He's a good lead blocker.
He blocked for Rashad Penny. How hard can that job be?
All right, so good point. So it seemed like every pick was run game, run game, run game. We'll talk about the Packers in a second, which was the opposite. My bigger complaint with that feels like something if you're the New England Patriots. So the Patriots' run defense was so bad last year that you add a couple players to shore that up because it's a weakness. If everything else around the roster is in good standing, say, from a pass game standpoint, the Lions, I still think, with Ziggy Ansah on one side, Anthony Zettel with 1 year of surprising production under his belt, still need pass rushers. The secondary, Darius Slay, Nevin Lawson, Tease Tabor, still some question marks there beyond Slay. Coverage linebackers, they don't really have a guy.
No.
Yeah. Devin Kennard, Jared Davis, and Christian Jones are all bigger, run-first type of players. That would be my bigger issue with the Lions' defense not being ready to stop the pass from a stylistic standpoint. Pass game looks pretty solid. I mean, other than the O-line can do a little bit better as far as pass pro. Ragnow is going to help that a little bit. They've got a good set of receivers. So they're okay there. But there was nothing about these picks that said, hey, we're going to get better against the pass.
No. Nothing about these picks that said we're even factoring in the pass game as if it doesn't exist. This is one of those drafts that I don't understand. I think it's an incorrect way of approaching this stuff. Kerryon Johnson, I think, is a decent player, but there was at least 2 backs on our board that were significantly better than him when they took him, and they traded up to make it happen, which means the value that it cost you is even more. Tyrell Crosby, I think, could be a really good player at the next level, but where his value would be good is at left tackle. It moved into guard, you're diminishing what he can bring back in terms of value. Drafting a fullback is...
Maybe that's his immediate route to the field, though, and they could develop him at tackle, maybe a potential right tackle down the road.
It seems
Taylor Decker on one side.
It seems that if you were doing that, you would probably announce the guy at tackle, and then just later on you're saying
unless
he's
they're just saying, look, we have we have a left guard issue with Kenny Wiggins slated to start.
I just think typically if you're taking a guy that you think is a future left tackle, you don't announce him as a guard, even if he's going to play there year one.
I understand.
So
we would have liked to see the Lions attack the pass game a little bit more. I think that's
also, by the way, they drafted Deshaun Hand in the 4th round.
Yeah, we had a much lower grade.
Yes.
On him. We had a much lower grade. All right, let's move on to the Green Bay Packers. This was another one of the drafts that we gave the elite label. We really loved the Packers draft. It started with, well, let me just sum it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They earned a first-round pick next year from the New Orleans Saints, and they still snagged our number 1 cornerback and number 4 cornerback.
Yeah, they got a first-round pick next year and still drafted 2 first-round corners somehow.
Correct. So just that, I mean, if you just stopped drafting after those first 3 notes right there, two first-round corners and a first-round pick next year, they're winning. They're winning this draft.
What if I told you they then had 9 more picks?
Yeah, 9 more picks, and they added look, here, the best way to sum it up, and I did this on our draft recap video on YouTube that just kind of, highlighted our best drafts. I said, for the Packers draft was so good that we could ignore the fact that they drafted both a punter and a long snapper. That's how good they were. That we still gave them an elite label, and I'm not saying they wasted 2 picks, but they used it on a punter and a long snapper, which are less exciting. So let's just discuss. Josh Jackson was our number 1 corner.
Yep.
I understand the slide only because I can understand teams not necessarily thinking he's a perfect fit for every scheme across the board. Maybe a better zone corner than a man corner than some of these other guys in the draft. Ball skills, outstanding. Another guy, only 1 year of production for whatever that's worth. But when you can get him in the 2nd round, love that value there.
One of the best value picks in the entire draft.
Yep. And Jair Alexander, a guy that the more we watched him, the more we liked. A sub 6-foot corner, which thank you, NFL, for taking all these sub 6-foot corners who can move and cover. And I just love the way they did that this year from a league-wide standpoint. Alexander's best work came in 2016. Makes a ton of plays on the ball. And when you talk about need and value, I mean, the Packers need to revamp their pass defense. That's a great start.
Yeah, this draft is ridiculous. They went corner 1-2. They then got a coverage linebacker in the 3rd round in Aaron Burks from Vanderbilt. Your guy, Steve.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
Do we have to tell my guy story?
Yeah, go on.
So he's played every position essentially at Vanderbilt. The first ever game I did for PFF college when we started grading in 2014, Vanderbilt versus Temple. And first quarter, Aaron Burks is playing free safety, closes on the ball, and he was my one-play scouting. I loved him. I was like, all right, I'm following this guy over these next few years. The grades were never great because he went from free safety to edge rusher to traditional linebacker over his 4 years at Vanderbilt. But I do think he's a guy tested through the roof. I do think he's a guy that you just want to get on the field, maybe use him as a tight end eraser, use him as just this movable chess piece, because he showed a lot of promise actually as an edge rusher, even though he's a little undersized for that. So I like the pick as far as athleticism and adding some speed to the defense.
Then they went crazy with wide receivers. They drafted Jamon Moore from Missouri. They drafted Equinemius St. Brown from Notre Dame and Marquez Valdez-Scantling from USF. 3 wide receivers. They're a team that has a history of doing this. When they need to fix a position, they'll take multiple shots at it, assuming that one of them is probably going to pay off. Last year, it seemed they did the same thing with running backs, and weirdly, it seemed that all of them paid off.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and then the other interesting pick I like is Cole Madison, offensive tackle from Washington State. See, Washington State have this weird system under Mike Leach where they only ever pass the ball, essentially. And it's all quick stuff. It's all, RPOs, that kind of thing. And so everybody looks at these Washington State guys who have incredible pass blocking grades, pass blocking numbers, and think, it doesn't really count. These guys are going to have to move into guard at the next level because they're kind of small. They're undersized. They don't have the long arms. The Packers, though, might actually keep him outside at tackle. He was guard all the way through the Senior Bowl, by the way. Packers are going to keep him outside at tackle, and you might have yourself another David Bakhtiari here in terms of pass blocking monster. Struggles a little bit more in the run game, but as we've established before, who cares?
No, I like it. So that's worthwhile in the 5th round. To discuss those receivers quickly, Jamon Moore, long, tall corner with speed, coming out of that Baylor-y type system that they run at Missouri, so they run 2 routes.
Insane 3-cone time.
Yes. So He might take some time just because I think all the receivers coming out of those systems have generally taken some time because they don't understand route concepts. It's, very basic stuff. But he makes a ton of really impressive plays on the ball. Equinemius St. Brown, he went lower than I expected because, dude, he's 6'5" and can run routes. I've said that about him, Cortland Sutton, some of these big receivers that can actually get in and out of breaks. He's one of them. So I think he still has some developing to do too. But with Aaron Rodgers, potential red zone threat, I just love the fit for some of these big speed receivers.
Yeah.
An elite draft.
It really is. That, I think, is one of the best drafts in the entire league, if not the best.
If you guys are watching on the YouTube channel, Josh Jackson and Jair Alexander both have their own individual scouting report breakdown that you guys can go check out on the Pro Football Focus YouTube channel. Minnesota Vikings, Sam, kicked it off with a good pick that we enjoyed, Mike Hughes, and then some questionable picks that you didn't love. I know that. So let's start with Hughes and what they're getting and his fit with the Vikings defense.
Yeah, I think Hughes is a good pick. People were talking about this team needing to attack different needs, the offensive line in particular, but that secondary is definitely in need of upgrade. Xavier Rhodes is fantastic. Harrison Smith is fantastic. Outside of those two, there's nobody there that cannot be upgraded on dramatically, particularly a corner. So I really like the Mike Hughes selection. He's got some pretty crazy coverage numbers as well. Wasn't beaten for a pass longer than 21 yards all last season.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love his work in off coverage. I think he can play a little bit in the slot with his movement skills and everything. There's a lot of value there.
Yeah, he's quick. He's aggressive. He's got ball skills. He's got added bonus as a return man, though that's becoming less of a factor than it ever has been before as the league inexorably marches towards eliminating the kickoff as a play. But for the moment, it's a slight bonus. I think he should push Trey Waynes to start on the other side opposite Xavier Rhodes, and he could be the guy that moves into the slot when they go to nickel situations rather than trying to force guys like Mackenzie Alexander into the slot where he's clearly not particularly comfortable.
Yeah, I like it. Just a reminder, to all these players that you're talking about, find out the more detailed breakdown in the PFF draft guide. When you have Edge or Elite, you sign up for either package, which you get 365 days of access, by the way. So you sign up now, you're essentially getting a lot of next year's coverage. Within that year, you'll probably get 2 draft guides for the price of 1 if you sign up today. We can go read about Mike Hughes, every other draft pick, what we thought of them, and all advanced stats that you truly cannot find anywhere else. All right, after Mike Hughes.
Yeah, then this draft went off the rails a little bit.
So Brian O'Neill's not, look, he's a developmental tackle again, and this felt like there was a couple tackles we liked at the top of the draft, and then about 10 guys that have issues that could develop. O'Neill's probably the most athletic one of the group. He makes some spectacular blocks in space, but for a second-round pick, there's a lot of projection there for him to become a valuable component of the offensive line at the next level.
When was the last athletic tackle with a bit of upside that they drafted from Pittsburgh?
Oh, TJ Clemmings?
Yeah.
Completely different players, though.
I'm just saying.
Clemmings was a monster. O'Neill does have a couple good years of grading. He just he gets bull rushed a little bit, lacks some power. So he has things to tie up. So he's a guy that we probably would have liked more in the 3rd round than in the 2nd. Their next pick, Jalen Holmes, in the 4th. I know he was one of the guys that you vocally couldn't stand watching at the Senior Bowl because he kept getting owned.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways people can stand out at the Senior Bowl. There's the Will Hernandez way, which is you take the guy that's trying to get past you and you destroy him play after play after play and almost never lose. The other way of standing out is to be the guy that is being destroyed. And when you watch the one-on-one drills and you see there's one guy that seems to lose every single snap, and you ask, who's that guy? It turned out it was Jalen Holmes. So, yeah, I'm not wild on Jalen Holmes because when he went to the Senior Bowl against higher level of competition, all-star competition, he seemed to be the guy that was on the boot of everybody's, or on the sole of everybody's boot, who was getting ground into the dirt every play.
Tyler Conklin, the tight end out of Central Michigan, pretty good big body that uses it fairly well. One of the few college teams who would actually line up their tight end out wide at Central Michigan and have him, as a mismatch weapon against smaller corners. He does a pretty good job there. My favorite pick, though, was Colby Gossett, 6th rounder out of Appalachian State. He jumped onto my radar 2 years ago when he was the number 2 graded guard in the nation as a sophomore. has regressed a little bit since then, but has experience playing right guard, right tackle, and in a zone scheme, outstanding. Some of the most outstanding zone blocks I saw from a guard over the last couple of years. And he's got good size. It's not one of these, he's like 6'5", 6'6", making some of these athletic blocks. Just needs to clean up a part of his game a little bit in pass protection, but well worth it in the 6th round. I thought that was good value.
Yeah, he's got a chance to redeem this draft a little bit. We talked, so when you get to the lower rounds, teams tend to have a few different ways of approaching this. You know, you get the guys that are productive, that can do things like the Cowboys with Michael Gallup or Cedric Wilson, guys that have a proven track record of production, not necessarily the workout numbers you want to see. The other way teams do it is they take the best athlete they can find and they work on the basis that they'll be able to teach him how to play at the next level. And obviously PFF's standard or PFF's way of doing things would lean more towards the former than the latter.
Right.
For no other reason than you just don't have the practice time anymore to be able to teach guys how to play if they suck.
And even if you did, how much do guys truly...
Well, then you have then you have the question of how much you can even teach guys to not suck. The Vikings obviously fall into this latter category of let's find the best athletes and we have faith in our coaching staff. And ironically, it even extends to special teams where they just take the guy with the biggest leg and work on the basis that's probably the best thing for being a kicker or a punter. The last time they did that, they got Jeff Locke, who was one of the worst punters in the league, could boom it every single play straight down the middle of the field.
Daniel Carson's a pretty good kicker, though, coming out of
He is, but his most defining characteristic is the biggest leg in this draft class. Plus, they traded up to get him, I think, and they got him in the 5th round. That's quite rich for a kicker.
Well, they needed a kicker, Sam. They needed to go get a kicker.
Sure.
Ada Runa, another one of those
athlete
upside type of guys.
Not so much football
Vikings.
Player.
I would be fascinated if a team, I mean, if we were running a team and we were just going through our late round picks were just all these uber productive guys that we loved that maybe fell in the draft, and compare that to the teams that are taking guys that just tested incredibly that maybe weren't as great on the field, and just kind of see how that would work out over time.
So this is one of these drafts where it's all down to what they can teach them. You know, they've drafted a whole bunch of athletes late in this draft, and we're going to see what they're able to do as a coaching staff in terms of turning these guys into productive NFL players. I remain skeptical. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Producer Mike here. Sam and Steve got a little bit carried away with all the draft craziness that's been going on these past few weeks. So what we're going to do with this NFC recap is we're going to make it into a 2-part episode. Part one rather, is what you guys heard today. Part 2 will be coming your way tomorrow. We'll probably do the same thing with the AFC podcast. I'm not sure if that's going to be 1 part or 2 parts, but make sure you keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review the PFF NFL show. The more you help us, the better content that's going to allow us to produce. So make sure you do that. And in the meantime, thank you guys for listening as always, and we will see you guys soon.